The Islamic State declared its presence in 2014 in a caliphate across great swaths of Syria and Iraq. Now, 3 years later, ISIS has been routed from most of the land that it once held. But the destruction and wounds of war will be long-lasting, no more so than for the children who the extremists sought to brainwash and turn into a next generation of fighters. They call them the cubs of the caliphate. From northern Iraq, special correspondent Marcia Biggs reports.
Mosul may be liberated from ISIS, but the fear on its streets is palpable. As some of its almost 1 million citizens begin to return home, the issue on everyone's mind is the possibility of a resurgent ISIS. Throughout the 9-month battle, Kurdish and Iraqi officials tried to root out ISIS fighters and sympathizers, screening and detaining thousands from the mass of people who fled the city. Many of those detained were children, and some were what ISIS called their cubs of the caliphate, seen here in this propaganda footage. ISIS made the recruitment of children for military purposes routine, sending children as young as 4 years old to training camps where they would learn to fight, kill, and even die for the Islamic State.
They wanted them as young as possible so they can shape their minds.
Usman Lak is a child protection specialist for UNICEF.
Some of them are forcefully taken and forced to become fighters. Some young people have joined for financial reasons. The breadwinners could have been killed or went missing. So some of the young ones had to step up and find ways to support themselves and their families. The majority of the kids in detention are between 15 and 17.
15 to 17, that means when ISIS came, they were between the ages of 12 and 14.
Yeah, of those who sit in detention now joined when they were 10, 11, 12.
These are just kids.
It's just kids.
One of those kids was 16-year-old Mahmoud. He was just 13 when ISIS came to his village. He says ISIS fighters picked him up from a neighborhood mosque and took him to a training camp where he was kept for 45 days.
They
promised they would give us cars, guns, and money. Then they promised that we would go to heaven.
And did they give you those things?
No, they didn't give me anything.
Mahmoud says the camp was deep in the desert, where children from Turkey, Iraq, even the United States were put through a boot camp, which included weapons training and target practice.
Were you good at it in Tamni?
No, I was not good. I used to keep my right eye open and left one closed, but I was supposed to do it the other way around. So I never hit the target.
Punishments were severe, and the indoctrination was so intense that he says some of the boys even volunteered to be suicide bombers. After 45 days, ISIS gave the campers a break in their training. Once home, he says his family forbade him from going back, sending him to a relative's house to hide.
At the beginning, I was mad, but then I stopped being angry. When you first come back from the camp, the ideas stay in your mind. But after a little while, you stop believing in the ideas of ISIS.
When coalition forces began driving ISIS from Mosul last year, his family heard that children who'd been in training camps were being arrested. And Mahmoud says he surrendered to protect himself.
If I went to prison and paid my dues, I would come out more comfortably. No one could then accuse me of being ISIS.
First, he was taken to a jail for processing in the town of Gayara.
There was misery there that none of us had ever seen before. Some people were given no water for 4 or 5 days, 3 days with little food. Some people tried to eat the plaster off the walls. One guard whose brother had just died fighting ISIS would come and beat us and accuse us of killing him.
Do you wish you hadn't turned yourself in?
Yes, whenever they would beat me violently, I thought it would have been better had I not surrendered. Some people were tortured, kicked, and beaten with cables. They were kept in tires to keep them from moving.
He was then sent to one of several jails just south of Mosul, where photography is now strictly forbidden. But these images surfaced a few months ago. He says the beatings stopped, but that the conditions remained unbearable. We went to one of those jails and were allowed to speak to 17-year-old Mohammed. He was just 14 when he joined ISIS, or Daesh as it's also known. He had only been at the camp for 2 days when he lost his leg in an airstrike. He asked us not to show his face, and we filmed him in the dark.
Why did you join Daesh?
ISIS had already killed 12 members of my family. They killed my brother-in-law and arrested my sister and her child. My other brother-in-law fled to Baghdad and joined the federal police. That means we were a wanted family. If I hadn't joined, I would have been killed. And at first the situation was really good. They gave us presents and organized games. They gave us candy.
After liberation, he says he also surrendered, thinking he would be treated better and he could go back to school. Instead, he's been here for 3 months, and he has not been able to communicate with his family.
The condition in the prison is stifling, overcrowded. There is feces everywhere. People are sick and have skin diseases. The conditions are scary here. It's a nightmare. Inside the prison, it's a nightmare.
What do you think will happen to you?
My fate is not clear. I don't know.
Without our cameras, we were allowed inside the holding cells.
So we just came out of the prison. We weren't allowed to film, but let me tell you what it was like going inside there. The stench was incredible. Flies everywhere. People stacked person to person, not able to lie down, just sitting up. We literally had to step over every single one of them. There are apparently 100 children in there, combined with 300 other men.
The scene in the jail was much like this one, and we're told some boys can stay in facilities like this for as long as a year. As we left, we saw the mothers, hoping and waiting for their sons. Mahmoud served 8 months in prison before being released. His mother Miriam says that for more than 2 months after his arrest, she had no idea where he was.
This was the most difficult period of my life. It started with ISIS and then continued with the government arresting our children instead of letting them go back to school.
We spoke to a representative of the local government, and she says that anyone who joined ISIS is a criminal, but that prison is meant to rehabilitate the children.
How is detaining them in overcrowded prisons, where in some cases they're beaten and they're held with adults, how is this going to help them?
That is your opinion. But actually, my opinion is that it's the role of the government to guide those people, to reform them. If we let them out on their own, they could create a new movement. It's a prison. These things happen. Torture takes place, unfairness, discrimination. Everything goes. This is prison.
Are you afraid that releasing these children will pose a threat? That ISIS sleeper cells will use them to attack Iraq again?
1,000,000%. We expect that. I received one kid who was just 9 years old, and he had cut off the heads of 3 people. So you answer me, what am I to do with this case?
Not all of the children are a danger to society, and Locke is implementing psychosocial programs in some of the prisons. But he can't get into all of them. He's not had access to this prison or the one that we went to. And he says reversing the stigma for those released is also a huge obstacle.
Do you think the families of these children would feel safe to come forward to try to get help for them?
We met kids who are not able to stay in touch with the families because the families don't want to have contact with them because of the association, because that could potentially put their families at risk.
So where do they go?
Good question. I don't know.
As we drove through Mosul, where the makeshift soccer fields line the streets, we were reminded of just how many young boys have come of age under ISIS.
What breaks my heart is that some of them may be facing now 10, 15 years in detention because of the choices they've made. But at the end of the day, they're just kids.
Just kids in a community and a country that won't soon be ready to trust them again. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Marcia Biggs in Mosul, Iraq.